Things an avoidant does when he chooses another woman over you. The moment an avoidant chooses another woman, something inside the relationship quietly begins changing. And what hurts most is that you may notice those changes before he ever acknowledges them. His words might remain familiar, but his attention, effort, warmth, and emotional availability gradually begin disappearing. You start feeling like someone who was once important suddenly became completely replaceable to him. But before you blame yourself, understand what his behavior may actually be communicating. The first thing he often does is quietly reduce the effort he once consistently gave you. Messages become shorter, conversations become less meaningful, and emotional curiosity slowly disappears from his behavior. He may stop asking how you feel because emotional conversations now feel inconvenient to him. Instead, his attention becomes increasingly focused on the woman he has decided to pursue. You may notice that he suddenly has more patience, enthusiasm, and emotional energy for her. Meanwhile, the things you once requested from him somehow seem impossible to receive anymore. This can make you wonder whether you were simply asking for too much throughout the relationship. You may start thinking you were too emotional, too demanding, or perhaps too difficult to love. But wanting communication, consistency, affection, reassurance, and emotional presence does not make you difficult. Sometimes you are simply requesting relationship qualities that he struggled to provide consistently. His inability to provide those things does not automatically mean your needs were unreasonable or excessive. Another thing he may do is suddenly describe the other woman as easier to understand. He might say she is calmer, less demanding, more independent, or simply more compatible with him. Hearing those comparisons can feel devastating because you remember everything you sacrificed for the relationship. You remember the patience you showed, the conversations you initiated, and the chances you repeatedly gave. Yet now, it may appear as though another woman receives everything you once desperately requested. But there is something important you need to understand about avoidant emotional patterns. Sometimes, emotional distance feels safer because it does not immediately demand vulnerability or accountability. A new relationship can initially feel comfortable because deeper emotional expectations have not developed yet. There may be excitement, novelty, attraction, and fewer complicated conversations about emotional responsibility. So what looks like effortless compatibility may actually be the temporary comfort of emotional distance. Another painful behavior is the way he may begin rewriting your relationship afterward. Suddenly, beautiful memories become less important, while every argument becomes evidence that things were impossible. He may focus heavily on your mistakes, while conveniently forgetting everything you contributed positively before. He might describe the relationship as unhealthy, without acknowledging how his own withdrawal affected you. This selective version of history can make his decision feel easier to justify emotionally. If he admits how deeply you loved him, leaving you becomes emotionally more complicated internally. So instead, he may convince himself that the relationship was never genuinely right for him. He may repeatedly remind himself of your differences, because those differences make emotional separation easier. And eventually, you might start questioning whether the entire relationship was simply imagined inside your head. It was not imagined just because he now chooses to remember it differently. You may also notice him becoming unusually defensive whenever you ask about the other woman. Instead of calmly answering your questions, he might accuse you of being jealous or controlling. Suddenly, the conversation becomes about your reaction instead of his behavior and emotional choices. You find yourself defending your feelings rather than receiving honest answers about what actually happened. This reversal can leave you feeling guilty for reacting to something that genuinely hurt you. Another common behavior is keeping you emotionally nearby while investing his real attention elsewhere. He may still watch your stories, react to your posts, or occasionally send familiar messages. Sometimes he may even send something completely random just to reopen the communication channel. Those little interactions can easily make you believe that he still wants you emotionally. But occasional attention does not necessarily mean genuine regret, commitment, or a desire to return. Sometimes he simply wants reassurance that the emotional connection has not completely disappeared yet. He may feel uncomfortable knowing someone who once loved him has finally detached emotionally. So when you begin becoming distant, he may suddenly become interested again for a while. This creates the confusing push and pull pattern that keeps you emotionally attached to his behavior. You wait for another message, another sign, another moment when he finally realizes your value. But there is an important difference between missing your presence and choosing you intentionally. Someone can miss your attention without being willing to offer you emotional consistency. Someone can care about losing you without being prepared to build something healthy together. And someone can feel lonely without actually wanting the responsibility of genuine emotional intimacy. If he has truly chosen another woman, eventually his actions will become increasingly consistent with that decision. He may become more comfortable publicly acknowledging her while keeping you outside his emotional world. He might introduce her to people who once knew you as his partner. He may create memories with her that you once desperately hoped you would experience together. Watching that happen can feel like being replaced, especially when you invested years emotionally. But please remember something before you compare yourself with her. Different relationships can activate completely different emotional patterns within the same person. He may currently behave differently because the relationship has not reached the deeper stages yet. The early stages can feel easier because vulnerability, expectations, and emotional accountability remain relatively low. Once deeper intimacy develops, however, familiar avoidance patterns may eventually appear again. That is why his current behavior with her should not become your measurement of worth. You do not know what happens privately when excitement fades and emotional expectations become stronger. You only see the chapter he is currently showing you from the outside. And perhaps the hardest thing he does is make you question whether you were ever enough. You begin wondering what she has that you somehow failed to possess. Was she prettier, calmer, more interesting, less emotional, or simply easier to love? But love is not a competition where the person with fewer needs automatically wins. You should never have to erase your emotional needs just to become easier for someone. You may also notice him becoming extremely private about his new relationship around you. Sometimes this happens because he knows his decision could deeply hurt your remaining feelings. Other times, he may intentionally create emotional distance by making the relationship impossible to discuss. Either way, his privacy does not mean you need to keep searching for hidden explanations. At some point, his behavior gives you enough information to stop investigating his intentions. You do not need another conversation, another explanation, or another emotional confession from him. His consistent actions can tell you what his words continue trying to avoid admitting. And if those actions repeatedly show that he has chosen someone else, believe them. That does not mean you suddenly stop caring or instantly erase your feelings. It simply means you stop allowing someone else's decision to determine your value. You stop competing with another woman for attention that should have been freely given. You stop asking what you could change to make him finally choose you again. And slowly, you begin asking a much more powerful question. Why did you need him to choose you? Because the person meant for you should not require you to compete for basic emotional security. You should not have to become quieter, prettier, colder, or less emotional to receive commitment. You should not have to disappear completely before someone finally realizes how valuable you were. And you should never confuse someone's inability to love consistently with your inability to be loved. If an avoidant chooses another woman, let that decision reveal his direction, not your worth. Let his choice become the information you needed instead of the rejection that destroys your confidence. You can grieve the relationship without chasing the person who decided to leave it behind. You can miss him without reopening a door that repeatedly left you emotionally exhausted. And eventually, you may realize that losing someone unavailable created space for someone emotionally present. So if he chooses another woman, do not spend your life asking why she won. Ask whether the relationship you were fighting for actually gave you the love you deserved. Because sometimes, the greatest rejection becomes the moment you finally stop rejecting yourself.